Hello YouTube, welcome to another Preseason 7 League of Legends guide. Today we're covering the recently reworked Fizz.
Let me at him!
For more of my content, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/egamingtv or on Twitter at egaming_TV. All of the links for my social medias and the timestamps for this guide will be down in the video description, so make sure you check that out. I do Riot Point giveaways at the end of every month on my Twitter, as well as a poll each night on which champion I should cover the next day. So, if you're interested in entering those Riot Point giveaways, or you want to vote on which champion guide should be next, make sure you head over to Twitter. But now let's move on to our pros and cons. Fizz is still a champion that does have very high burst potential, but a lot of it now comes from his W. He's a pretty strong 1v1 laner, and he does have great mobility from both his Q and his E ability. He's then also able to dive under tower and dodge with his E ability. It's an ability that makes him untargetable for a pretty decent duration, which is a pretty strong part of his kit. With all of this mobility, high burst damage, and ability to dive under tower, he does have very high snowball potential. He can snowball with the best of them, and not even sitting under your tower can save you. Now, although he is a very strong assassin, he is very hard to master. You are reliant on landing your ultimate, which is a skill shot, and your E ability can take time getting used to. You're then very squishy when you don't have your E ability because it's your only way of actually dodging damage. Then finally, like all assassins in the game, if you do fall behind, it is rather hard to catch up because if you don't have the items to delete tanky targets, you're going to be rather unimpactful. For your Masteries, you'll want to go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as your Keystone Mastery. Fizz is a quick comboing assassin that relies on deleting single targets, and Thunderlord's Decree will add some nice extra damage into your combos, and can sometimes be the difference if you get a kill or not. It's then going to add some nice extra harassment in that lane phase so you can bully the enemy mid laner. For my runes, I go for Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, a mix of Scaling Cooldown Reduction and Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. I like to take 6 glyphs of Scaling Cooldown Reduction, so I will get 10% cooldown reduction at level 18. If you're a Fizz that doesn't mind getting Ionian Boots instead of Sorc Shoes, or you do like to get a Morello Nomicon, then you may want to go for full-on Magic Resist instead. I, however, don't like going Morello Nomicon, and I prefer Sorc Shoes. Your first required summoner spell is Flash. You're a very squishy mid lane assassin, and Flash will be able to save your life in all sorts of different situations. You can also use this offensively to close a gap on a target so you can finish off a kill. Now my second favorite summoner spell on Fizz is definitely Ignite. You're a champion who relies on having a decent lane phase and mid game, and this can add some much needed kill pressure and can potentially get you snowballing. Exhaust, however, is a good alternative to Ignite. If you're against a high damage assassin, Exhaust will really increase your dueling potential and can potentially help you win 1v1s. Now let's move on to your abilities, starting with your passive, Nimble Fighter. Fizz is perpetually ghosted and takes 4 to 14 based on level less physical damage from basic attacks, calculated before armor. So the first part is pretty cool because you are perpetually ghosted. That means you can walk through minions and you don't actually get blocked. Then the second part, you take less physical damage from basic attacks, is also great because you will take less damage in that lane phase and you'll have an easier time staying on decent health. Now let's look at your Q ability, Urchin Strike. Fizz dashes a fixed distance towards the target enemy unit, dealing them 100% AD physical damage plus bonus magic damage. The physical damage applies on-hit effects and the magic damage applies spell effects. So this is one of your main ways of getting onto a target since it does have a 550 range and it is a dash. It also works great with your Lichbane and your W ability since it will apply those effects. We do, however, max this ability last. We just get one early point at level 3 so we can use it as a gap closer. Now let's move on to your W ability, Sea Stone Trident. For the passive, Fizz rends enemies on hit, those he passes through during Urchin Strike, and those affected by Chum the Water's Lure or Shark, dealing them magic damage over 4 seconds. When activated, Fizz's next basic attack deals bonus magic damage. If the target has been bleeding for at least 2 seconds, the damage dealt is tripled, which gives it a 100% bonus AD ratio. If Sea Stone Trident kills its target, its cooldown is reduced to 1 second, and it restores some mana, which makes it great for last hitting under towers now. This is easily our best ability now on the reworked Fizz. You will not struggle at last hitting under tower, and this 100% AD ratio makes it even better than your E, and it does have a lower cooldown as well. Therefore, we're going to be maxing this ability first, unless we need that increased mobility from our E. So now let's look at that E ability, which is called both Playful and Trickster. For the first cast, Fizz hops onto his trident towards the target location, becoming untargetable for 0.75 seconds before splashing onto the ground below him, dealing magic damage to nearby enemies and slowing them for 2 seconds. For the second cast, Fizz immediately hops off his trident towards the target location, dealing the same damage to nearby enemies, but without applying the slow. So this is the same as before, and it's great on Fizz because becoming untargetable for a rather long duration is a great way at dodging abilities and even auto attacks. It's great for tower diving because you can use the rest of your kit to delete the target and then use this ability to become untargetable, and the tower obviously won't be able to hit you. I like to max this ability second now behind my W unless I do need the reduced cooldown, so I will be able to dodge a lot more often and take less damage. Now let's look at your last ability, your ultimate, Chum the Waters. Fizz throws Lure forward in a line that attracts a shark, causing it to emerge after 2 seconds, dealing magic damage, knocking aside surrounding enemies, and slowing them for 1.5 seconds. The further the lure travels in its initial flight, the larger the shark that is attracted, increasing its slow, eruption radius, and knockback distance. So now with this ultimate, you want to try to get it onto somebody from a farther distance since it will do 120% AP ratio as opposed to the 60% if you are next to a target. Other than that, it's basically the exact same ability, you just want to get it onto somebody from farther away. For your skill order, you'll want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then we'll want to max either our W ability or our E ability first. I almost always stick with the W because it has the best damage potential, but the E ability will reduce in cooldown, and if you really need it to dodge abilities, then you will want to max it first instead. Either way, save your Q for last, just get one early point at level 3 so you can actually use it as a gap closer and use it to apply your on-hit effects. Now let's look at a couple combos, starting with our lane harassment combo. You'll first want to start by auto-attacking the enemy to apply your rend. After 2 seconds, you want to activate your Sea Stone Trident and then auto-attack the enemy, but you can also use your Q to hit the enemy and apply that as well. Then finally, use your Playful and Trickster to either dodge damage or re-engage onto the target. For our all-in combo, we first want to land our Chum the Waters on the target. You'll then want to activate your Sea Stone Trident and hit the enemy with your Urchin Strike as soon as the shark lands. This will be 2 seconds, and therefore you will get that max damage from your Sea Stone Trident. Then finally, use your Playful and Trickster to chase the enemy or escape if you do need to. You're also able to use your Playful and Trickster before step 2 to close the gap as well instead of using the Urchin Strike. In the early game, you're going to be rather weak against most champions until you have all of your abilities. Make sure you don't push the lane or take unnecessary harassment from the enemy. When you're level 2, you can start trading with your Sea Stone Trident active and your Urchin Strike. Just make sure the rend has been on the enemy for at least 2 seconds before you activate Sea Stone Trident and hit the target with Urchin Strike so you do the maximum damage. Levels 3 to 5, you'll want to trade more aggressively against the majority of champions since you can deal a lot of damage and are able to get out with taking any harassment with your E. When you're level 6, try to land your ultimate from a decent range so you do get a rather large shark, and then go for an all-in. In the mid game, you're probably going to want to start spending more time roaming. Try to get down the mid lane tower as quickly as you can and then shove the minion wave so you aren't at risk of losing your own tower. Now it's time to roam. Look for a lane that's either shoved or one that's vulnerable to tower dives since you can get out of tower range with your Playful and Trickster without taking shots from that tower. When you're near the enemies, try and land a Chum the Waters from a decent range since it gets stronger the further it came from. If they're under tower, then you'll usually want to close your gap with your Urchin Strike so you can escape with your Playful and Trickster. In the late game, teamfights are going to start breaking out a lot more often. Your job is to delete either the AD carry or AP carry with your high damage mobility and then escape. You'll want to wait until the teamfight starts and then try to get onto the backline. If you can flank the enemy team, that's the best way to get to your targets. If you need to go through the front line though, you can scatter them with a well-positioned Chum the Waters and then use either your Urchin Strike or Playful Trickster to get onto your squishies. When you win that teamfight, make sure you follow up with an objective. Now let's look at a few hard matchups, and first up we have Ahri. She's going to be a pretty damn hard matchup unless you can dodge her charm throughout the whole lane phase with your Playful and Trickster. Most good Ahris though will hold onto their charm until you've used your Playful and Trickster, and then proceed to all-in you once it lands. Therefore, you're going to have to hold onto your Playful and Trickster for when she uses her charm. Next here is Annie, and a good Annie is really hard to deal with in a 1v1. The main reason here is because her whole burst combo comes from when you're stunned from her passive, which makes your Playful and Trickster not that effective against her. You're probably going to need to rush an Abyssal Scepter in this lane just to survive through her burst combo. Just try to survive that lane phase, get all the farm you can, and spend the majority of your time roaming afterwards. So here's 2 more hard matchups, and first up is Kayle. You'll want to abuse her early in the lane phase, especially if her Righteous Fury is in cooldown. This lane will get a lot harder when you're both level 6 because she can stop the burst damage with her intervention. Try to get her to blow it before you go for a Chum the Waters. Early on against Diana, you're going to want to harass her as much as you can with your Sea Stone Trident and Urchin Strike combo, and then use Playful and Trickster either offensively or defensively after. This lane, however, gets a lot harder when you're post 6. You have to dodge her Crescent Strike at all costs because if she gets multiple uses of her Lunar Rush, you'll usually die even if you jump away. There's definitely other hard matchups for Fizz, but these 4 I really don't like to see. Alright, now let's finish this guide off with our item build. We have a bunch of different starts we can go for, but the 2 most common I use is the Dark Seal Refillable Potion and a Warding Totem, or if I do need more sustain, a Corrupting Potion and a Warding Totem. If you're in a hard AD matchup, then of course you can go for Cloth Armor and Pots, and of course the Doran's Ring and Pots is a very viable start as well. The Dark Seal is definitely my favorite because I will be able to get a Magi's if I do start snowballing, and if I do need the added sustain, I can easily turn that refillable into a Corrupting. For your normal core item, we go for a Lichbane, Abyssal Scepter, and a Zhonya's. At level 18, this will already CDR cap us since each of these items here gives us 10% CDR. Of course, Lichbane is easily the best item on Fizz. It synergizes really well with his kit and really adds some nice burst. Abyssal Scepter is then a great way to increase that damage even farther and get some magic resist at the same time, and Zhonya's is fantastic. That Activate is great in your combos. Now, sometimes we may need to get a Morellonomicon. I like to avoid this as much as possible, but if we're against something like a Swain and a Mundo, you really don't have an option. If I'm really snowballing, then sometimes I'll get the Luden's Echo as well, especially if I start roaming, because that movement speed and increased damage is fantastic on Fizz. For our boots, we then have Sork Shoes, which are definitely my favorite, and Ionian Boots if we do need 10% CDR. For our item pool, first is Rabadon's Death Cap. It's fantastic on Fizz because we are an AP assassin, and this gives you the most AP. Void Staff is pretty much a must-buy as well in that late game because people will have magic resist, and this will give you some nice magic penetration. If you're looking to add more slows and get a decent health pool, Rylai's Crystal Scepter is a pretty solid item as well, but not one I buy too often. As previously mentioned, if you did go for the Dark Seal and you are snowballing, then you could get that Magi's. Hextech Protobelt is a decent way to get 10% more CDR if you do need it, and increase your burst damage. Then finally, we have the Guardian Angel like always. It's a fantastic way to get some armor and magic resist, and also be able to come back to life in the later stages of the game. For our normal full build, we take our core and then simply add the Void Staff and the Rabadon's Death Cap. Easily the best Fizz build in the game in my opinion, as it does a ton of damage, has that magic penetration, and a lot of extra damage added from the Lichbane. If we had to go for the Morellonomicon instead, we'll take that in the beginning, get that Lichbane, add a Luden's Echo, then a Void Staff and a Guardian Angel. We'll stay CDR capped with this build, have a bunch of damage, yet have the Guardian Angel so we can come back to life in the later game, which is pretty solid as well. But that, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything I've got for the pre-Season 7 mid-lane Fizz guide. Don't forget to check out the video description below for the links to my social medias for more of my content. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide, and I will see you guys in the Champion Guide tomorrow. Peace! Let me show